You know how sometimes your fridge gives you signs or clues that maybe it's time to clear it out? Like maybe it gets a little smelly, or you just notice there's some weird stuff growing on some of the things in your fridge. Well, that whole concept got me thinking about, are there times when our stuff can actually speak to us and give us clues about whether we should keep it or not? Sometimes it might be less obvious than some weird green thing growing on something in our fridge, but I think if we pay attention to the clues around us, we can be better at decluttering. And let's be real, decluttering is hard. So today I thought I'd share with you 6 clues that indicate maybe it's time to let something go, in hopes that it might help you be more efficient and effective at decluttering. The first clue that maybe it's time to declutter something is that the item is still in its original packaging. Now, sometimes this can be a pitfall. Sometimes I find something new in the original packaging, and it's kind of a trigger for me to want to keep it. Like, I feel like I'm wasteful if I declutter it. Like I should use this at least one time to see if I like it or will find it useful. There's that feeling of guilt involved, like I should have used it. And there's also this feeling of hope for the future, like maybe I could find some use out of it. But ultimately, if it's in the new packaging and I've been doing just fine without it, maybe it's a sign it's okay to let it go. Maybe this one feels obvious, but I've had the opposite experience where I find it more difficult to get rid of new things. So if you can shift your thinking and just think of new packaging as a sign, I should let this go, I think you might be able to get rid of more. A second clue that's closely related is to think about if you've used the item in the past month. Now, maybe it's out of season or there's a particular reason why you haven't used it, but in general, if you haven't used a belonging in the past month or even the past year, then it's maybe a sign it's time to part with it. Using your own past behavior as an indicator of future behavior is always smart, because what's the best predictor of future behavior? Past behavior. So if you haven't been using something, you're far less likely to use it in the future. A third clue that maybe it's time to let something go is that you only have one purpose for that belonging. Like sometimes I have a particular dress or pair of shoes that only work at specific occasions, or maybe I've only used one time. It might be a sign that I'm just not going to use it much in the future. Brainstorming how many different ways can I use this belonging? Is it useful in a bunch of different scenarios and contexts? Can give you a little bit more information about whether you should keep something or not. A fourth clue is that you forgot you even had the item. This one comes up for me way too often, where I'm doing a declutter and I find an object that I totally forgot I had, and quite often in these moments, I suddenly have an urge to keep more. I'm like, oh, I found this thing. I have so many opportunities to use it, so much possibility. I think that I'll find ways to use it finally in the future. Or maybe it's something I used a ton in the past and I'm excited to use it again, but I just kind of forgot I had it. Regardless, sometimes if you forgot you even had the item, it might be worth letting go, because just think about it. The more you have, the more you kind of forget belongings you have and the less you'll use them. So if there's a whole bunch of stuff you just totally forgot about, getting rid of that will help you pay attention to the items that really make an impact on the quality of your life or really do something for you. If you haven't thought about this item in quite a while to the point where you forgot about it, it's probably a sign you don't really need it, and also that you don't really want it that much. A fifth clue that maybe it's time to declutter something is that you're keeping the item for someone other than you. So often, I realize I'm keeping items because I think, oh, like this person in my family might like this. Maybe I should offer it to them. Or, oh, this person gave me this belonging, and so I feel like I should keep it because it was a thoughtful gift. There are lots of reasons why we might keep things for other people, and being aware of for whom you're keeping the item can really shed light on whether you should keep it or not. Now, I want to add a caveat to this, that I don't think we should be like decluttering other family members' belongings. Sometimes we do keep things because they're somebody else's or somebody else really wants them. But I mean when it's like your stuff and you're faced with it and you're kind of keeping it for somebody else. Maybe it's even as simple as like an item that you think you look cool in and you're keeping it just because you think somebody else will be impressed with it rather than like you actually like it. But I've realized that then I kind of lose sight of my personal style and I'm just keeping extra stuff for other people rather than for me. So just pay attention to what your motivations are for keeping items and whether it's about you or somebody else. Another clue that maybe you should consider decluttering the item is if you're keeping the item for emotional reasons alone. I think maybe along with this, a red flag should go up if you're noticing you're getting really emotional in a decluttering process. That might be a sign that something's going on for you that goes far beyond the use of the object. Now, there might be exceptions to this. We all have some of those sentimental pieces, and that's not only okay, sometimes it can be really good, but I think that quite often we keep a lot of our stuff because we're feeling guilty, because we're feeling anxious, like a fear of regret that we'll regret decluttering it at some point in the future. Maybe it's just a general feeling of attachment and anxiety around losing the object, or a feeling of discomfort that doesn't even have to have a logical reason necessarily. But sometimes we're keeping things because we have some kind of emotion wrapped up in the item and it's hard to let it go. But I think having a conversation with yourself, maybe even aloud, can help you process what emotion is going on for you. If you can try to be aware of what emotions you're feeling in the moment and how those emotions are influencing your motivations or your thoughts around decluttering, I think you can try to get back on track and not just keep something because of an emotion, especially because emotions are fleeting. They aren't who we are. They aren't our core identity. They're just a state, a way of being in that moment. And so I think it's important to shift our attention to our values, what we care about, instead of just a momentary fleeting emotion. So if you start feeling emotional during a declutter, which honestly often happens for me, just let your antenna go up a little bit to pay attention to what's happening and to make sure you're not keeping something just because you're emotional about it. Anyway, those were my 6 clues that might indicate it's time to declutter something. Hopefully you found them to be helpful. If you have other ideas for clues that maybe it's time to let something go, feel free to share them in the comments below. You can also subscribe below for more videos like this. I have a whole bunch of them. And if you ended up enjoying the video, please hit the thumbs up button. Doing that does a lot for this channel, so if you're willing to take the time to just hit that thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. I also want to quickly mention I have my Instagram linked below, and it's a pretty small community there, but I think down the road it might be a space where I ask for more ideas or feedback for this channel. So if you want to be in more contact with me as far as forming what kind of stuff you're going to see on this channel, I'd encourage you to follow along there. I also have a Patreon and I post extra full videos there that I think are sometimes even a little bit more personal, more casual, more chatty. I really like that form of video and I don't worry as much about what's going to do well on YouTube there. And I think in that sense, I'm able to be that much more authentic on that platform. I also just recently created a video about burnout and specific strategies you can do to overcome it, since that's something I have struggled with historically. And so if you're interested in getting more content from me, then I'd encourage you to join that community. It's a great way to support the channel. It allows me to keep making these videos. If you want me to keep doing this, I'd love it if you would join me there. And I think that's all I've got for you. Thanks so much for spending this little bit of time with me, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.